Hi, and welcome to the Business Revolution podcast. My name is Rob Yates, and together with Mark Hopkins, we're going to be bringing you a special guest today, a guest that we are delighted to interview. This podcast is sponsored by the TetraKey Business Secrets Club, our free membership program with no catches, no credit cards, no commitments, that you can go and join and receive over £20,000 of business coaching every year for free. You can simply join by visiting www.tetrakey.com and clicking the link in the homepage of the website, or clicking the link in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's move forwards into this amazing podcast. Welcome to the Business Revolution podcast. Now, recently I had the pleasure of spending an hour in the company of a very, very fascinating gentleman called Professor Sri Kumar Rao. And he, as always, threw things and curveballs. And even though he's a very humble and gentle human being, I felt like I was beaten up by the end of the podcast because of the challenges that he threw down into me. And the feedback from our listeners has been fantastic. And I wanted to carry on the journey of boxing. I wanted to carry on the journey of giving you access to individuals who are going to do a little bit of a box on the nose. They're going to make you sit up and look at the world. They are going to show you that the world isn't easy. There's journeys that we go on, but there are enlightenments, there are moments that make us pause and reflect and smile. And this individual has been through quite a journey, and he is flourishing, and he's flourishing in a way that is impacting thousands of people in over 50 countries. So I am so thrilled to share an hour of Mr. Brandon Peele's time. He is, and I love to use the word because it's a word that doesn't get used. We use the word expert far too often, but we don't use the word guru anymore. And Brandon, in my mind, having done research, listened to loads of his videos, is a purpose guru. And we're going to delve into purpose in a second, but it's great. We've got a mutual acquaintance in Professor Rao. Brandon has ran CPM retreats. He's attended multiple things. So he is going to take what Professor Rao shared with you to a whole new level on guru-ness around purpose. So Brandon, thank you for joining us. And I'm sitting here, and to be honest, I've got the shakes a little bit because I'm just intrigued about what's going to come out of our mouths over the next hour.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's great to be here with you. And of course, our shared love for Sri Kumar Rao is at the bedrock of this discussion, because that's really where the doors blew open for me. So it's great to connect.
Cool, yeah. And we are going to take CPM to a whole new level over the next hour. We're going to talk about inner, outer, inner verses. We're going to talk about the whole shebang. But let's crack on. We'll share a little bit about who Brandon Peele is as we go through this conversation. But I want to start off as the purpose guru. There's a number of labels that get chucked around at the moment, and we're going to delve into. We've got the mindfulness, we've got gratitude, and I must admit, I sometimes get very frustrated with labels. I had a conversation with a client recently who was talking about bullish and bearish and stuff, and I'm just going, can we not just simplify life in terms of exactly what we're thinking and speaking about? So here's another label: purpose. What is purpose?
Yeah, so it's a word that gets thrown around a lot lately, and I think that's actually a good thing. And just while we're on the subject of labels, like guru is not something I'm totally comfortable with because I'm only 42, and the people who I've studied with, I would regard them as gurus, and I'm, I guess more of a practitioner and somebody who carries forth, very ancient work in a modern context. So to answer your question, what is purpose? The simplest way I can describe it is that it is your deepest identity. Like it is this kind of fundamental core identity that gets expressed in all these beautiful ways in your relationships, in your career, in how you hold yourself in your family, your community, your workplace. And it has a lot of active elements and a lot of passive elements. But when it does come online, and everybody's connected to some aspects of their purpose right now, but when it comes fully online, it does these three core things. And the first is it reveals. So, meaning you get to know yourself not as Mark, and I get to know myself not as Brandon, but really who I am and what I'm committed to. So it's kind of a transpersonal identity in a sense. So to give you an example, I have a client who's committed, like her deepest identity is to empower women and minorities to be successful.
Hmm.
And that's really who she is at the deepest level. You know, for myself, I also work a lot with women, but I define myself as somebody who evokes Shambhala leadership, which is a word that I use to describe somebody who's fully purpose awakened and fully aligned and integrous. So it's like that's really the revelation piece of purpose. It just pulls back all the BS, all the internal beliefs, any identities that came from culture, gender, sexuality, nation, and reveals who you are. The second thing is that it aligns, meaning this is, like the matrix that Professor Rao talks about so frequently. Like you get the splinter in your mind, right? You can't forget it, like who you really are. And even if you take no explicit action, you intuitively start to align yourself with that purpose. Like it just starts to occur to you like, oh, well, is this aligned with who I am to, not put that quarter in the parking meter? This aligned with who I am to treat my dad this way? So passively it starts to align your life, but I find that the best results happen when people are actively embodying and aligning their life. They look at their work, say, is this bringing forth my deepest commitment, what I really care about, the ways that I want to contribute, and to start to take actions to align that. Same thing in health, relationships, and so on. And then the third piece, and this kind of goes without saying almost, is that it's guidance. You get a vision for your life and a vision for the world. And you get this kind of very clear, like lady justice thing. Is thing that I'm going for really aligned? Is it really what my purpose is? And so people end up saying no to a lot of 95% solutions. They're like, no, like I'm going for that. I'm going for that. And so they end up being much more focused and guided by that internal identity.
Disha, I'm just, as you're talking, it's as we always do. I'm listening to what you're saying, and you're saying stuff, and it just sort of again smacks me in the face a little bit about what I did today, and something that was very, very simple that I'm suddenly going jeepers. So I care a lot about the environment, care a lot about society and what we're doing at the moment, both environmentally but also emotionally. And I went for a run, and normally I'm very focused on my run, but I saw blooming McDonald's carton next to the bin, and I stopped my run and put it into the bin. But again, as you say, as you were talking there about alignment and revealing and stuff like that, it's interesting. So a couple of things that came out of this, because obviously what you're talking about is a deep awareness and understanding of who you are, which is not something that comes naturally to a lot of us. And especially I'm assuming it's not age dependent or time dependent. Is this something that just happens to us, or is it something we wake up one day with a clarity, or why do we need to do it, and how does it all happen?
Yeah, well, there are some of us who are kind of naturally rooted in that. And I don't know if that's nature or nurture, but what I do know is that purpose isn't part of most cultures any longer. It used to be. It very much used to be. Each of our traditions has this kind of hero's journey, this initiation rite where you get christened by your tribe. So, Africa has got plenty of these traditions still alive. Latin America, South America, a lot of these traditions are alive where you have village elders and shamans who move you through a series of rituals and trials to actually have you get connected to who you are. No longer a child, no longer a son, no longer this or that, but this is really who you are. And we've lost that over the last, 400 years of globalization, last 200 years of industrialization. We've moved ourselves away from our parents. We moved ourselves away from our elders, our traditions for initiating people into their soul's image, into really who they are. So it's an epidemic. I mean, really, it's if you think about well, some of the research is kind of indicative of this. They say 87% of the global workforce is disengaged, like just kind of checked out, working for the weekend, working for the vacation, working for retirement, and uninitiated, not really established in who they are and bringing that fullness into work, bringing that fullness into their marriages and their families. So this work of reconnecting people is something that is very ancient, and in a sense, it's very new. I mean, there aren't that many folks who do this work. I mean, maybe 300 or 400 worldwide who do it in the kind of Western world. And it's my firm belief that it's a birthright. Like, we need to be initiated into who we are, and too many of us have gone without that and are just like pretending like we know what we're doing when almost none of us do.
Yeah, 100%. We'll chat about society and how society is evolving and the positive influence that we're seeing, but also I think what you're alluding to there is some of the things that used to ground us that we've lost. And so I'm asking now as a parent. So I have a 9-year-old boy, and I agree in terms of what we need to do to protect our young and help our young find their purpose. Just in that, how do we do that? How do we reconnect with and help others reconnect or identify their purpose as they start flourishing?
Yeah. So it's a great question, because youth, I mean, they are often this beacon of purpose just kind of naturally. And they only really start to forget it when they start to get socialized. So, basically beginning about 3 or 4 years ago with your son as he, is moving into different contexts with school and extracurricular activities. And what parents can do, this has been studied by a colleague at Stanford, William Damon, and he's got the Youth Purpose Initiative and writes books on this. And basically what he says is like, be in the question yourself as a parent, and have a connection to your own purpose. So if you have to do some work on that, go do some work on that, but to talk about what's meaningful to you, what really matters to you in terms of, in your case, the environment. I'm sure there's other things that are really important to you, and what your life is about, that's kind of transpersonal, that moves you beyond just the concerns of livelihood and survival. And so, as you know, kids learn more by who you are than what you say. And so to have 1 or 2 people in the home that are really tuned in, that are like, when their purpose feels cloudy, that they talk about it, like, God, this work isn't fulfilling anymore, or really who I am is somebody who stands for integrity and creativity, and that's just missing in my professional organization or whatever it is. And then the second thing is, in the conversations with children around chores, talk about what it means, not just like, pick up your room, brush your teeth, all that kind of stuff, but that there's a larger context. So it kind of starts to orient kids to like, okay, I'm doing this for a reason. So it kind of starts to build that purpose muscle, that purpose vocabulary, that they can see, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I don't want to have a stinky mouth or I'm doing this because we're preparing the house for my birthday party, or I'm doing this because it makes mommy really happy when she walks in the house, and the grass is cut, or something like that. So they get a sense that household chores and tasks aren't like this thing that means nothing. It actually means a lot. And then the other piece, and this comes more from the conscious parenting world, but it also has a big impact in creating a purpose-driven child, and that's in how you reflect their performance and their actions to them. And so it's instead of like good boy bad boy type stuff, it's more like, well, this is how this made me feel. So they get that whatever they do, positive, negative, it has a personal impact on you. And not that like they're bad for doing it, just that they know, yeah, that I felt really proud when you walked up to your sister and kissed her on the cheek. Or I felt, maybe proud's not the right word, but I felt really grateful for who you are. That made me warm. Or I felt really sad when I saw you punch your cousin in the face. or and to just kind of reflect personally about how it affects you, and not like that it's bad to do that, which it's not desirable, but that allows them to develop the sovereignty and the agency that who they are matters. Like it's their actions matter, they impact others. And so just those three things can have kids start to develop this muscle memory of like, oh yeah, there's meaning in my primary male role model. Like he talks about it, he shares about it, he shares what's real for him, what inspires him, what bums him out, and that he reflects who I am and what I do in a way that like doesn't carry all this judgment and morality with it, but really just reflects like what the impact of his behavior is.
I've never thought about it, and I can't wait. We'll go to this at the end. I love that concept of the purpose vocabulary and purpose muscle. I never thought of it as a purpose muscle. So can't wait to touch on that later as we go into some of the hows. We'll give some tips. The second thing that struck me in what you talked about there, and it's something that I know CPM is big and Shrikkumar Rao, which is being present. And what you're articulating there is actually be present. It's not, as you said, not just go clean your bedroom. It's be present in the journey that child's going through in order to help them build a connection around A plus B plus C and stuff. So thanks, Tony. That's given me as a parent, that's given me a nice little punch on the nose. Because he's got chores, he's very good at chores, but I don't think I've ever connected the chores to a purpose. So I think that the second thing, the thing that you touched on there, which I'm really interested, and you mentioned at the start, I'm really interested to delve a little bit deeper, is obviously gender stereotypes, especially around purpose, where as a male you are. I went to a British public school, so I went through the stereotypical sent away at school. If my first night as a 13-year-old, I have never been so scared by what the 18-year-olds did to intimidate us. Right? It was. If I actually said out loud what they did, there'll be police knocking on those people's doors. But that's how you get. That's how I was brought up. Very brought up. You're in that environment. And now, as a parent, I'm trying to be different to how I was brought up to connect. I know you do a lot of work with women. How do you find that gender differences? What is it around the two that manifests purpose in slightly different ways? What can we learn off each gender?
Well, it's hard for me to render any kind of comprehensive rock solid like this is what women purpose is and man purpose is and all that, because I only get to deal with how men and women show up. Yeah. Meaning like what their current expression is. And what I find is that when men come into the question, it's usually from a place of impact and legacy. Like they want to know, like, what is mine to do in the world? What do I need to achieve? What do I need to, I need the clarity so I can bring the fullness of who I am into that goal. It's very like yang, very just like, let's do it, fight, like the mission. Whereas I find women come into it more from a place of, wanting to like know and love themselves fully. Like there's these moments, these kind of purpose crises that all of us have. And for men, it tends to be career usually. Whereas, women come into it from like this place of, or I find that women come into it from this place of like life not working, like that they're passed over for promotion, or that they're taken advantage of at work, or that they have a series of unfulfilling relationships, and they want to understand really what is at their center, so they can have a whole life that is expressive of purpose. Now, men have this too, but I find that women more often find themselves out of alignment and present to the pain of that misalignment. Whereas like men can kind of live from the neck up and not be present to the pain of, oftentimes they don't have access to their emotions. They're just like, hey, I just need to know like what direction to go and I'll go there. Yeah. Whereas like women are like, life sucks. I'm present to the pain of life sucking, even if they're super successful, like a lot of folks are. But the outcomes are very similar. They all get the direction, and they all start to see that like they can't just be their purpose in their career or just their purpose in the relationship, but they have to live in alignment and coherence in every area of their life. So they come into it through different pain points, but the journey is the same. It's the same initiation, the same kind of revelation, the same alignment, the same guidance system that gets created.
Yeah, I did. It's interesting you say, because I did a marriage course years ago, and it went down the concept of, it's very simplistic, and I'm sure some people might be offended by what was mentioned, but they said that women see the world through pink eyes, they speak through a pink mouth, and they listen through pink ears. Men speak through speak through a blue mouth, look through blue eyes, and hear through blue ears. It's not wrong; it's just different. And it's how you appreciate and support difference, I think, is a critical thing. And I'm assuming that's the same in your work in purpose as well. I'm again, my assumption being that there's no right or wrong way to feel purpose. It's just purpose. It's just you, who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you bring up some really good points here, because what I've seen, not just in purpose work, but in some of the other work that I've done with the Mankind Project, and seeing men evolve through various life stages, and also seeing women evolve. But I find that there's like this like rebalancing. Women get a deeper connection to their own masculine, their own internal sovereign. Men get a deeper connection to their relationships, to their feelings, to their emotions. And essentially over time, men become more men by embodying the feminine, by listening more, by being more open about how they feel, by creating more, by being more sensual. And women become more of the sovereign feminine by invoking, what it is that their life is about, and expressing their leadership and asking for what they want and going for the raise, the promotion, the new job, all that kind of stuff. So there's a way that society is constructed that has us kind of in these default modes. But over time, we start to come together. We start really to come together as just humans, as whole humans who both have this external expression of purpose and then this internal and relational connection to purpose, like who we are in our most important relationships.
Yeah, and you mentioned society there, and I'm fascinated by, and we started off talking around ancestors and evolution, and how previously the sense of purpose, probably we had greater clarity around our purpose because of society at that time. And I'm fascinated in your view in terms of why are we in an era at the moment where we get bombarded by happiness courses, gratitude courses, mindfulness, purpose. What is it about the world and the society that we're living in at the moment that has caused us to lose sight of some of these fundamentals? These are basic core principles that we've had, and now we're in a position where we need to be reminded of stuff. Which I just so why are we in this place at the moment? Why are you so important to the party?
Yeah, well, it does go back to that kind of forgetting like who we are, and as humans, like what is our essential humanness. And the last 400 years or so, we've been moving towards this kind of masculine linear logic achievement goal orientation, just in the broader kind of industrialized world. And we've got a lot of good stuff out of that. We've got a lot of amazing things from modern medicine, the internet, connecting as a whole species, uh, amazing technologies for renewable energy and for, that aid human flourishing. And we went through a macro cycle where we had to forget a lot of other stuff. So we moved into this place of individualism and individual achievement with the Enlightenment, and beginning about a little over 100 years ago, we started to service like, wait a minute, we forgot a few things. Like, we can't just diminish the feminine. We can't just destroy nature. We can't just live without a connection to who we are. We need to resurrect that. So the theories, the psychological theories began around that point, and they started to get really crisp and well articulated in the 40s and 50s with Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, with the work of Abraham Maslow. And then about, 1964 was when the first kind of scientific language was given to purpose, and they started to measure it and quantify it. And they found that like people who have this connection to purpose actually start to have great lives. They make more money. They have higher levels of wealth, greater levels of contentment, fulfillment, leadership effectiveness, productivity, engagement. And so what we're witnessing right now is a cultural phenomenon where we are reconnecting with a very ancient truth, stuff that we forgot. And we're developing new pathways, new rituals, whether that's through psychotherapy, whether it's through doing explicit purpose work, could be vision quests, medicine ceremonies. So we're resurrecting all of this, and we're trying to make ourselves whole again as individuals, and starting to create cultures and organizations that reflect that wholeness too, where the whole person can come to work. So it's new, novel, but when you take a longer view, it's really a remembering. It's remembering who we are as individuals, as tribe, as a species.
I got embarrassed recently. I moved house, and I made you a little bit envious when I told you where I've just moved to. I'll just remind you how I sat at my desk this morning and saw a pod of whales just pass my by. But anyway, I just dropped that one in just so you can start crying again. But I used to live in a complex. It was a 7-unit complex, and it's embarrassing to say that I only really knew one other family in that complex. I didn't know anyone else. I knew their names. I knew nothing about them. I didn't know how many kids they had. And again, when we talk about, it's always funny how the society we live in now, I'm imagining when I said that phrase just now, I didn't know much about them. The first thing that people would have thought I would have asked is what work they did, what jobs they did. And again, we go straight back. We feel that our work defines who we are. So just one of the questions that came up to me as I was thinking about this, and I'm not sure if you can be this sort of scientific or cold on it, but if you're struggling with a clarity around your purpose, how would I feel? What would I feel? What would I experience?
Yeah, well, the way I've seen it shown up more is like the sense of being stuck. Like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. Like, if I don't keep scratching this itch, I'm going to keep having the same relationships, the same job satisfaction, basically the same, relative relatively functioning but not alive experience of life. And so there's like a stuckness, and depending on how much work somebody has already done, like if they've had an experience of their purpose and they're out of alignment, they can feel really bad about themselves. Like they can be like, oh, I screwed up. I should have, followed my heart and studied this and gone into this profession. I know better. So there can be a lot of that kind of virtue, or that vicious cycle of beating yourself up, where the critic says you didn't do this, and then says you're bad because you didn't do this, and you're bad because you forgot you did this, and you're all this kind of highly self-critical inner dialogue. So those are the kind of the two things that show up. And then there's also like the damned if you do. So when people start to say, okay, well, what would it look like if I was fully alive in my career and in my life? Then the chest starts to tighten. They're like, oh my God, I could lose my house. I might be in the wrong marriage. My professional reputation. I might look foolish. All this internal dialogue around new actions starts to surface. So it's kind of like caught between a rock and a hard place. You're just in the middle, being like, get me out. And each of us has different ways of responding to that. We could zone out, drugs, alcohol, media, games, that sort of stuff. We can internalize it and just start to shut down more and more each year, and try to diminish what's possible through negative thinking. And that usually starts to show up in the body in all sorts of terrible ways. Your body starts to attack itself because you're out of alignment. So, yeah, I mean, it's just basically just feeling bad, feeling sad, mad, hopeless, frustrated, stuck, and afraid of change. That's usually where people find themselves right before they pop.
Yeah. I presume it's that feeling of complete confusion, utter confusion, not quite knowing which way to go. So I'm interested. We've talked a bit about why we're in this place at the moment, and you've now just shared some of those physiological and psychological triggers that you'll have. Obviously, the work that you're doing is helping people find their purpose, and if they've lost it, reconnect to it. How do you see the next 10, 15, 20 years going around society and purpose and all this stuff? What are you imagining? You and I, we're catching up in your new place, and when you're next to the beach as well, then you can rub it into me when you're looking at the whales. What do you think our conversation is going to be like in 10, 15 years' time?
Yeah, well, so there's a lot to be hopeful for and a lot to be afraid of. We're witnessing, I'll just speak more from a United States perspective. We're witnessing like the old way. All of these institutions that were founded kind of around, during the Enlightenment are starting to crumble. Democracy, government, the free press, how we take care of our women, our children, the elderly, people who don't look like me and you. And we're starting to see the unworkability. And we're in this kind of cultural, species-wide, in the United States, especially a country-wide purpose crisis. We're like, oh my God, this isn't what we came here for. We didn't leave feudalism and monarchy to have feudalism and monarchy in this, and the destruction of our environment and all that we hold sacred. So there's this kind of there's cultural and institutional things that are being kicked up. Me Too, I Have, Black Lives Matter. Everyone's saying like, whoa, like, we thought we were creating an enlightened society, and what we did was just kind of put some less direct language around oppression and the unworkability of our political economy. So that's going to continue to happen. We're going to keep seeing, institutions crumble, new ones rise. Institutions crumble, new ones rise. So a lot of the kind of existing systems for economic and political power will have shifted dramatically in 10 years. You're already starting to see it in California, where we're having multiple political parties. We're changing how we do local governance, more, citizen participation, all that kind of stuff. But on the cultural level, like, the die is cast in a sense. Like this purpose movement has gone beyond the tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell elucidated. They say that whenever a particular population, whenever 13.5% of it gets hold of something, it starts to spread like wildfire. And that's what's happening. We now have, just in the United States, we have over 30% of the workforce that is engaged, and it used to be a lot lower. We have more and more brands, large companies orienting themselves around the idea of human potential, saying like, if we want to be successful, we want to keep people longer than 18 months, we need to develop them, and not just develop them as cogs, but develop them as individual contributors, as leaders. And and we're already starting to see this in organizations. So I think large organizations will start to develop people, have them discover their purpose. Like, I work with a number of big companies who are already hip to this. And I feel like there'll be like a right sizing, and this is partially because of all the gifts of the, information technology revolution. We can now do more with less. We don't need as much capital and infrastructure to run a business. So there's going to be more small businesses. So I'm hopeful, and we really also need steady hands at the wheel of our governments to make sure that in this transition we're not leaving a bunch of people behind. Because right now it's more or less rich white people that are doing self-awareness work, that are doing purpose discovery work. And that has to change if this is truly going to be like a generative evolution for our species.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I'm seeing this. I coach a national hockey team. And the first thing we talk about is sense of purpose as a squad, and we talk about humans first, hockey players second. We really try, and we see that. And again, obviously, South Africa has come through a challenging period of time where, and we still have the challenges that we're dealing with, and getting that collective sense of purpose, and like you said, not focusing on just one area, actually embracing everything and embracing everyone's purpose is the only way that we're gonna see success. I'm obviously very interested. So that's where you're seeing the world going. What brought you into this space? What I know, we've talked about the word guru, but let's use another word that begins with G, which is guide. You talk about being a guide, a purpose guide. What brought you onto this journey? What was your journey like in order to become a purpose guide?
Short answer is CPM, but it really obviously began with my initiation into the American dream. And growing up in Chicago, it was very much a success mentality. Go to a good school, marry your college sweetheart, get a good job, become partner, move out to the suburbs, make more humans, move to Florida and die. And that was what you got. And if you didn't like it, you had professional sports to watch, you had Little League to coach. I mean, you had things that you could do that were potentially more meaningful. But there wasn't this conversation around, there's something unique for you to do, Mark. There's something unique for you to do, Brandon. And so, like a lot of people, I accepted the deal, studied business, began my career in investment banking, venture capital, startups. And even though I was, quote unquote, winning, I was like, I hate this. I hate myself. I don't want to be like any of these jerks. But I didn't have the language to even say, I don't know what my purpose is, because that just wasn't on the table. And so I started to escape, like a lot of people who had more money than sense, threw myself into partying. And by the time I was 27 or 28, I've been arrested in 6 different states. I think my 6th state was actually during CPM in New York City after a rugby holiday party. And luckily CPM came online like right at this time for me. And I really started to look at, oh my God, like, who am I being? I'm good at Excel and PowerPoint and partying, but not really wise about anything else. And so I just got how ignorant I was. I didn't know myself. I didn't understand anything about the contours of the human experience, knew nothing about spirituality, philosophy, poetry, mysticism, any of that stuff. And so while my classmates went back to Wall Street and McKinsey, I came out to the Bay Area near San Francisco and just threw myself into personal and spiritual development work. And still working for different startups and social enterprises, teaching universities, founding nonprofits. So I was exploring meaning and work, but the primary thrust of my time was to discover who I was. And I did a lot of personal development seminars like Landmark, the Mankind Project, going to India, Vipassana meditation, going to Burning Man, hallucinogens, nonviolent communication, relationship courses, like just, trying to get to the heart of who I really was. And this period was really fruitful, but it didn't really land me in this knowledge of my purpose and what my life is about. And I had the good fortune to meet a purpose guide in my early 30s. And hands down, this was the most effective, transformative work I'd ever done. I got clear of all that kind of internal chatter, all the different channels, the critic that tells me I'm not good enough, the image consultant that says I'll look foolish, the skeptic that doubts if it's even real, the risk manager that doesn't want to lose my livelihood or my professional reputation. And I started to actually hear the deeper truth. So out of that work, I was like, this is what's missing. Like, this is the thing. This is what's been missing for me, this deep initiation into my soul. And so I then got trained by the Purpose Guides Institute and have been leading this work for executives and teams since 2012. I've had the chance to bring it into big organizations like the United States Marine Corps, Johnson & Johnson, Morgan Stanley, working with executives from Google, Apple, Tesla. And this is really what I care about. I mean, I just had my 3rd book come out in March called Planet on Purpose. But it's not just to do the work myself, but to champion the movement that this is real. Everybody's doing this, and it's moving into education, into religion, obviously the economy, and I hope politics very soon. So that's kind of how I began my long-term romance with purpose.
It's a really incredible story, and there's 2 things, and I can't wait to chat a little bit now about your book. But there's two statements and phrases that you said in there, which I am beaming from ear to ear because I just love what you said, and I hope listeners, you think about this question. The first thing that I loved you say is that moment when you sort of looked at yourself and said, "Who am I being?" It's just a fascinating way to phrase that question. Who am I being? I absolutely love it. And I can relate to that question. I had a moment in Amsterdam when I was coaching hockey full-time professionally, and I was doing a silly amount of hours a week. I think I was 80, 90 hours a week of hockey. And I was in a pub in Amsterdam, which led to a sort of an out-of-body experience. And as soon as I say out-of-body experience in Amsterdam, people make some judgments, but it wasn't caused by that. But it was that, who am I being? I was a boring human being. So I love that phrase, who am I being? I've never thought about that, and I cannot wait after to go and spend more time thinking about the question. And the second thing that jumps out of me in what you just said was organizations are set up with, as you said there, risk managers, HR managers. But what you articulated there was brilliant. I love it. The fact that your internal organizational chart, how you are having to please, you're the CEO, but you're the CEO of who you are, but you're having to be signed off by your own internal risk managers, debt managers, all that. I just love that. And again, it's something for listeners to be thinking about. Who's managing who here? Who is it's great. I love those two things.
Let me just riff on that just for a second, because this is a really key distinction. I think it's one that resonates with a lot of people who are, are working professionals, in that before purpose comes online, basically what you have is a boardroom with no leader. Like, you might be the meeting manager, but what ends up happening is, like, whoever is most annoyed, it's like the squeaky wheel syndrome. So if your image consultant is not feeling acknowledged, you'll go do some stuff and it may or may not work out and change your perception or other people's perception. If your critic is annoyed, he or she might make you just double down and work harder. If your skeptic is annoyed, it might kind of turn on the offensive to other people and like shut down ideas and possibilities. And so when purpose comes online, it's basically like an internal reorg. Like, you get a legitimate, anointed, organic founder CEO, and the other parts are still there, because that's part of being a whole, psychologically individuated self. You need that doubting function. You need that critic who pushes you harder. You need that image consultant that speaks into the listening of the room. You need the risk manager that doesn't walk out into traffic. You need they fulfill very vital functions, but they also need a reason in order to function effectively. And that's what that founder CEO does. It says, okay, this is where we're taking the company. This is where we're taking our life. This is our impact. This is the transcendent purpose that we work for. And so when that internal reorg happens and there's alignment, then you have full engagement. That's what has people, be 4 times as engaged as they otherwise would be 5 times as productive, be 64% more fulfilled, be 63% more of an effective leader. But that you have to have a founder CEO. And that's really what this reorg empowers.
Yeah, I love that. And I had that. And that, as you were talking there, the picture in my head came into that boardroom with an empty seat where that leader should be sitting, be it a round table, rectangle, the shape's completely irrelevant, but it's that one designated seat being empty. And bizarrely, as you were talking and the picture, I got clarity in my head. The picture was forming, and again, bizarrely, the picture didn't form with a person filling that seat. I suddenly went to a picture of a boat, and all I could see was that seat becoming the rudder of the boat, and everything, the sail, the ropes, everything being guided by that rudder.
Bingo.
So let's again. Just cannot wait to get my hands on Plans on Purpose and actually go and lock myself away and read it really in depth. So where did Planet on Purpose come from? What are you hoping that the Planet on Purpose is gonna do for society?
So, I've been studying this and training and practicing for a long time, and we don't need another book about how to find your purpose. I mean, there are thousands of books. Many of them are very good. But what was missing was a story that resonates with a modern audience. Meaning, we've had all this amazing research that says that purpose is a best practice for your career, for your love life, for your health, for society. And what Planet on Purpose does is it takes a reader into the science and brings it alive with story and narrative, and begin to get a sense for what their whole life could be. Because they're, the 20% of the population that is already growth oriented, that is already kind of a, little hippie inside, they don't need that. They don't need the science to know that they need to know their purpose. But the 80% who's, that early mover, late mover, they need that. They need the verification. They need to know that Harvard and Stanford, McKinsey and Yale have said that this is imperative. So the first half of the book kind of edifies the movement. It says this is real. This is not something made up by your HR team. This is like really, if you want to have the things you want, great health, a great career, great relationships, your purpose is likely missing. Then the back half of the book starts to look at these larger collective issues. What is the purpose of humanity? How do we instantiate a political economy that allows us to live our highest purpose, that rewards us for being truthful, that rewards us for developing ourselves in alignment with who they are, or with who we are. So it starts to look at what are the political, economic, and cultural shifts that we need to make collectively to actually have a planet on purpose, where each of us comes alive. Each of our relationships has a purpose. Our families have a purpose. Our companies, our communities, our local, counties and states and countries, but we can all step into this question together and create a world that really works for everybody. So that's what the book is. Started writing it like in earnest in early 2014, but there are pieces in there that go back to like 2011. So it's a very much a big, long project.
That's awesome, and we'll put the link into the description of the book. And I think it's the way that you describe it there is, and I agree. I think there are too many books out there at the moment which are all about I or you, and as we've been talking a lot about, the world that we're living in is far too much I. It's far too much individualistic. It's about I'm achieving my goals. I'm doing this. I. And I love what your take on your take on is it's I is not going to achieve what society is needing and the gaps that we have created. If we've created gaps and challenges in society, then it's up to us collectively to do something about
absolutely.
it. And it's a very unique way to look at it. And it's a great way to look at it. I think that there needs to be more collective awareness. We need to diminish. We've all got egos, and egos are very, very important. As long as the ego doesn't get in the way of the greater
absolutely.
good.
Well, and this is one of the I would say important myths to dispel right now, because a lot of the folks who are coming to the purpose question, it's usually not their first rodeo. Like they've experimented with therapy, with meditation, and a lot of the language out there is kind of anti-ego. It says like, oh, ego's bad. You just need to live from nothingness or from source or from God and
load of rubbish.
Unless you're Adyashanti or the Buddha or something like that, that is not a reality for most folks. And so what purpose work does is it creates a reorganization, but it still values the ego. It brings the ego with it. It updates these different internal parts with a deeper identity, one that is more transcendent. And so we don't actually have to surrender self, like a lot of Eastern paths recommend. We don't have to make ourselves wrong for wanting to have sex or eat a cupcake, but we can now be guided by something higher and ask if it's in alignment. And sometimes it's in alignment to have that fourth pint, or it's in alignment to eat that cupcake, or it's, in alignment to, let somebody know like the truth that they need to hear. If we took an anti-ego perspective, we'd be like, oh, it's just my ego that's reacting. Well, if you're like me, you've had people give it to you straight, and that's incredibly valuable. And so we need that personal truth. We need the ego online, but it needs to be updated in a sense.
Yeah, again, I love that way of aligning the ego. I especially with my sporting background, if elite athletes didn't have egos, they'd
Exactly.
never win. It's impossible to win without an ego in elite sport. You need that ego, but you need that, especially in a team environment. Your ego can never be to the detriment of the team performance. And again, as you're talking about that boardroom, sort of again, if we talk about leadership, and the role of leadership in bringing purpose to everything and everybody. And it almost ties us back a little bit to the conversation we had at the start around parenting, which parenting is leadership. That's all it is. And it's just a great way. Just again, a great metaphor to be thinking about as a leader is bringing that purpose, everyone's purpose, in a line to everyone's ego. I think is a really great way of looking at it. So I'm really interested to sort of, as we sort of start towards wrapping up, just to help people understand a little bit on. We've talked a lot about purpose, about why it's important, the role of purpose, what it feels like. But the questions, obviously, that a lot of listeners are waiting for now is the how questions. How do we stay on the path of purpose? You opened up by talking about alignment and revealing it. Just some with practical ways that help us understand the path of purpose, the way that we start our day, ends our day. Could you just share a couple of ideas for the listeners to go to think about?
Well, first, let me just dispel a couple myths or a couple of common things people do that essentially leave them in the same place. The first is thinking that some other job, some other relationship, some other family, some other house, some other city is going to have you feel good. So first thing first, like, don't make any changes. Like, don't get divorced. Don't quit your job, anything like that. And the second thing is that conventional wisdom, is more or less falls along the lines of, say, high school guidance counselors, or, what color is your parachute? Like, articulate what you care about and what you're good at, and then, start to network and find ways to express that at work. Now, you can get closer to the goal by doing that, working with a career coach, or, reading some of these books on how to love your job. But that doesn't emancipate you from the tyranny of those internal voices. And those voices are going to continue to hog the bandwidth that allows you to actually hear your purpose. And so even though you might get an intellectual clarity about what you're great at, what brings you alive, the world that you're committed to, the issues you want to contribute to, the internal boardroom is still the same. Like, you still have to listen to the same jerks over and over and over again. And so, my invitation is to go deep, go do a program, or go work with a guide, go do a vision quest, go do a medicine ceremony, and, develop a relationship with the shaman or the guide, someone who's going to help you integrate and update those internal parts so that they can be aligned with soul. So, basically, there's no substitute for hard work, as you know, Mark. And you've got to actually do the hard work of the reorg in order to get the benefit. Now, what can you do today, right? First thing you can do is look at the relationships that feel aligned. And you might not know your purpose, but you might have relationships at work and in your life that are like, wow, I just love spending time with that person. I always enjoy myself. I always feel real when I'm with them. And that's to spend more time with those people and less time with the people who are negative, a basket of complaints, competitive, guarded. You can just tell they're full of shit. Like, so, like, one of the things that has the biggest impact on your satisfaction and fulfillment in life is who you're transacting with, who you're with, and just limit your exposure to folks that don't allow you to be fully who you are, and then maximize your exposure to those who do. The other thing I would share is that a morning ritual is absolutely fundamental. Now, meditation is a good thing. I do a little bit of that myself, but something that actually connects you to who you are and what your life is about. This could be a purpose statement, where you say, as a loving man, I create a world of justice and prosperity by being kind and curious. You could kind of just generate a purpose statement off the fly, and that will, at minimum, anchor you in something that's more true and more real than what your internal voices are going to say, or what your circumstances at work or in your family are going to do. And over time, connecting with that every morning is going to have you see different ways to bring forth more of your truth and to live in a deeper alignment. Like I said, that's still no substitute for doing the work and doing the internal reorg, but you will start to see the world more through a sense of, am I in alignment or am I not?
Yeah, and the bit that I like about what you've just stated is it allows you to have triggers at some point that gives you that little pat on the back that we all need. And I had one moment actually my boy and I in the morning, we're not always disciplined on it, but him and I, when I wake him up, I'll allow him for a bit, and as he wakes up, we'll just chat for a little bit before we get out of bed, and I'll say, what are the 3 things that you're grateful for today, and what are we going to achieve today, and he'll ask me the same questions, and I'll talk about our relationship and stuff, and then there's trigger points. At the end of the day, we'll go, and he's a sports mad human being. So tonight, him and I played on the beach, just to rub it in again. Played throwing and catching, we played soccer, football. And when we played, he said, "Daddy, what's the time?" I didn't have my watch. He goes, "Can you get your phone out? Tell me what the time is." And I said, "Boy, I haven't got my phone with me. This is our time." And he sort of stopped in his tracks. He was like knocked over. It's like, so it's just you and me. I was like, no one's going to get away with this. And it was, so as you were talking about that purpose statement that you do to morning, it's something that I've thought about my why. I've thought about who am I. I haven't come up with a purpose statement, but that kind of, as you talked then, I sort of remembered him saying that, and I was like, oh, cool. I pat myself on the back that I'm actually living out my purpose.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Mark. And at the end of the day, every one of us can be present to something like that, and it doesn't take much. As you've been able to create with your son, it doesn't take a whole lot to have there be more depth and truth and meaning and connection.
Yeah, I agree. But as you rightly say and stuff, it's if you really want to have that, and again, I'm not sure if sustainability is the right word, but if you want to, because we talked again about, so you can find purpose, and then sometimes you can move away from it to get that real depth. Going on a course and really delving in and spending that time to truly get to the depth of some fundamental questions is still the most powerful way to answer them.
Well, earlier you had talked about punching the listeners on the nose a little bit, a little boxing.
Yeah.
And I want to follow that cue as we move to a close here. And that's, without purpose, there's no such thing as leadership. It's just management. Because, all we're doing is managing our fears and desires and concerns. And all we're doing is managing outcomes. But we're not really bringing ourself, our heart, our heartbreak, what our deepest longing, what matters, online. And that gives our teams nothing to say yes to. They just have to deal with the constraints of the management. So my invitation to anybody who considers themselves a leader or aspires to be a leader is that you have probably 60 to 70% more effectiveness and potential to be realized when you truly embody leadership that is grounded in your purpose.
Geesh, yeah, that doesn't smack a few leaders, stroke managers on the nose, then I don't know what doesn't. Yeah, and again, it goes back to that responsibility. What is your responsibility to society, to to your little community that you have such an integral role
Yeah.
to play. And how serious do you take that account, that
Yeah,
responsibility?
absolutely. And for CEOs and founders, I mean, you have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize the value of the company. And if you're leaving, you know, four of your five cards off the table, you're out of integrity with why you got hired. And
Mm.
you should be afraid. I mean, not like, do this or else, but like, your job's at stake in a sense if you don't do this. And it there's an enormous amount of joy and fulfillment to be had out of it, but like, there's something really real that's being surfaced here. This purpose movement is really an authenticity movement. And if people don't believe you,
Yeah.
if they don't get that, like, this is coming from your heart, your days are numbered. I mean, as leader, basically.
Yeah, I'm doing some work with some coaches at the moment, and the question I pose to them is: do you want to be the coach that in 15 years' time people still are wanting to interact with, speak to, have had an incredible impact on someone's life, or do you want to be the coach that either no one remembers your name or they cross the street when they see you come? And that's the same for all of us, irrespective of leadership, coaches, just being a good
Amen.
human being.
Amen.
So this is the moment that I don't enjoy, but we're gonna have to start closing. Even though I think you and I could probably
Yeah.
carry on for hours, delving deeper. But I've got just a couple of questions. One just slightly random questions, but one question which I'd love you to have a quick think about. I'm putting you on the spot here. Is um, what's the one question that you wish I would have asked you?
It's why do you care? Why do you care about this?
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
how is this not just another way to sell, coaching programs and consulting packages?
Hmm. So it's a great, it's a good question. Should have been asked. I slapped myself on the wrist. Um, but as I again, the good thing as I listened to your question that you posed to yourself, but indirectly to me, and I believe that for the last hour and a bit, you've answered that question without me asking that question, which is around the word that you've just used, which is authenticity.
Mm, yeah.
I think that's just cool. And then the final one, which is because this is just all about me, to be honest, Brandon. This question, uh, I have a bit of a crazy little thing that I like doing, which is I love doing star jumps around the world. It's just my little pet thing. I go to random places and I
Nice.
just do star jumps. And I've got a wall at my house of just about 30, I think now, star jumps in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, you name it, I've done them. Um, if you could do a star jump anywhere in the world, where would it be?
There was a honeymoon idea that my wife and I had kicked around and chose to do something else, but it would be at Arches National Park, which I think is in Utah or New Mexico, Arizona, or something like that. But it's one of the most beautiful pieces of art that's been crafted by the earth, and the shadows, the
Hmm.
colors, the shapes. I think you in midair doing a star jump would look beautiful against arches.
Well, I'm going to now add that to my list of places I want to do star jumps in. Um, before we wrap up, just I'm convinced all our listeners are now going, this has blown me away. There's about a million different questions. I want to learn more about this. I want to interact with Brandon more. How do our listeners find
So
you?
the easiest way is just my name. So Brandon Peele. That's BrandonPeele.com. And there you can see my work doing keynotes with leaders, with teams, And that's a great place to find out more about my books and my writing and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, it's a brilliant website. I'll share the link in the description, but I love it. You've got so many interesting articles. We didn't get a chance to talk about them, but there was one article about upgrading your life with purpose, which I loved, around your software and your hardware analogies and stuff. So I really recommend you guys all going to visit Brandon's website. There are just fascinating articles, and I'll also share some of your social media handles as well in the description.
Thank you.
And links to your book, which I am adamant there are so many people who've listened to this, and like I said, I'm frustrated with the concept of time at the moment and how time sometimes stops conversations. But I would like to just really, really thank you for two things. Well, actually, why limit ourselves? I'd like to thank you firstly from a purely selfish point of view for making me think in the last hour differently around parenting, about leadership, around being a human being. Thank you for allowing me to pat myself on the back a little bit and also punch myself on the nose. So that's been a fascinating thing. And thank you for writing a book that brings we to the heart of solving challenges and maximizing opportunities. It is an incredible thing to put we at the center of everything rather than I. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for challenging leaders and individuals to really be authentic in all that they can do to ensure that we are impacting and ensuring that all of us having the opportunity to live a life with purpose. So thank you very much for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your wisdom, your guiding principles, and your time with us.
My pleasure, Mark. And it's been great to have this conversation with you, because you're clearly somebody who is embodying purpose in all these different ways, especially with your son, with your team. And I felt that this is a real kind of fertile and generative exploration. So thank you.
What an amazing insight into the world of purpose, values, achievement, and I guess happiness from the amazing Mr. Brandon Peele. Please go and check out the link to his book and his website in the description below. This podcast, as ever, is brought to you by the TetraKey Business Secret Club. Our free to join, no catches, no credit cards, and no commitments business coaching service that is there to enable you to take your business to the next level, no matter where it is that you're starting from. It's been a pleasure to serve you, and Mark and I look forward to bringing to you more insights, more guests, and more podcasts in the coming days. Stay well, stay awesome, stay happy, and remember that to be successful, you will need to be a business revolution.